Okay, so you know how we always talk about getting beyond those like surface level history lessons?
Absolutely.
Well, buckle up because today we're diving into the Puritans.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And not just like the Thanksgiving feast and buckle hats version.
Right.
We're talking about the lasting impact of their ideas, which
Mm.
honestly, they're more ingrained in our world than we might realize.
I am so down for this.
Right. Like, have you ever heard someone praised for having a Puritan work ethic?
Huh.
Or like politicians talking about America as a city on a hill?
Yeah, you know what? That is fascinating how those phrases have just become so commonplace, right?
Totally slip into our everyday language. But those little sayings, they're like these little echoes of Puritan thought.
It's true. And it's interesting how we often boil down the Puritans to this caricature, the buckle hats, the witch hunts. But there's so much more to their story.
Way more. So much more. So let's like set the scene here.
Okay.
We're talking 17th century England.
Okay.
The Puritans, they were this group who believed the Church of England, it needed some serious, like, purifying.
Right. They wanted to strip away all the rituals and traditions they saw as like remnants of Catholicism.
Exactly. And when that didn't fly, they decided to, well, make a break for it and head to America.
Right, seeking religious freedom. But here's the thing, it wasn't just about escaping persecution.
Ooh, okay, I like where this is going.
They weren't just fleeing from something, they were driven by this intense desire to build something new.
Okay, so what were they building? Spill the tea.
A new Israel.
Whoa, okay, hold up. A new Israel. That's a bold statement. Were they literally trying to recreate ancient Israel in America?
Pretty much. They saw themselves as God's chosen people, like the Israelites of the Old Testament.
Okay, so they were diving deep into their Bibles and were like, we were the new chosen ones.
Exactly. And that belief, it fueled everything. Their politics, their society, even their military conquests.
Speaking of conquests, our sources point to Oliver Cromwell as like a prime example of this new Israel mindset in action, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So like even his military campaigns, they weren't just about politics or territory, were they?
Not at all. For Cromwell and those who followed him, it was all about fulfilling God's plan.
That's heavy stuff to wrap your head around.
Totally.
Okay, so they really believed they were on this divine mission, even to the point of like military action?
They did. And it's something that's really important to understand about the Puritans because this idea that they were a chosen people, it didn't just disappear when they landed in America.
What do you mean?
This new Israel idea, this sense of divine mission, it became deeply embedded in the DNA of America.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Think about it this way. That city on a hill image that everyone associates with the Puritans.
Yeah, the idea that they were building this exemplary society that everyone would look up to.
Exactly. It wasn't just a metaphor for them, it was a blueprint. They were building a new chosen nation, a beacon of righteousness in the world.
And that idea, it didn't stay confined to those early Puritan communities, did it?
Not even close. This chosen people mentality has sort of morphed and evolved over time, and it fed directly into this concept of American exceptionalism.
American exceptionalism like, the idea that America is unique and destined to lead the world.
Exactly. It's this belief that America has this God-given mission to spread democracy and freedom across the globe.
So we're seeing a direct line from those 17th century Puritans to like modern American foreign policy.
In a way, yes. And you can see it play out in other areas too, like manifest destiny.
Manifest destiny, remind me what that's all about.
It was this 19th century belief that America was destined by God to expand westward all the way to the Pacific Ocean.
Right, and that led to all sorts of, well, complications to say the least.
To put it mildly. And the justification for that westward expansion, it often boiled down to this idea that America, as God's chosen nation, had even a duty to claim and civilize this new promised land.
Wow, so this Puritan influence, it's not just about like strict moral codes and Thanksgiving, it actually shaped national policy and ideology.
Absolutely. And it gets even more interesting because these threads of chosen people thinking, they're woven into the fabric of modern evangelicalism, too.
Whoa, really? I never would have connected those dots.
Oh, it's a fascinating link. Many evangelical groups today, they see this direct connection between biblical prophecy and the fate of modern-day Israel.
Okay, I can see how that ties in.
Their support for Israel is often framed within this chosen people narrative, drawing these really strong parallels between the ancient Israelites and the modern state of Israel.
Wow, so this whole concept of a divinely favored nation, it's not just historical trivia, it's still shaping geopolitical views and alliances today.
100%. It makes you realize how deeply these ideas are embedded in our worldviews, even centuries later. But, it's not just America where we see this Puritan influence.
Oh, so where else are we seeing it?
Let's hop back across the pond to England for a second.
Okay, back to where it all began.
Exactly. England might not have become a full-blown Puritan theocracy, but those Puritan ideas, they seeped into the culture in some pretty surprising ways.
Okay, so spill the tea. How did Puritan thinking actually show up in England? Give me the historical gossip.
Well, let's start with that classic Protestant work ethic.
You mean the idea that hard work is like a virtue?
Exactly. The Puritans, they believed that worldly success was a sign of God's favor, and that fueled this intense dedication to hard work, discipline, and frugality.
Okay, so that whole idle hands are the devil's workshop thing.
Exactly. It's got deep Puritan roots. And even though most people in England weren't walking around thinking, I'm being Puritan by working hard, those values, they were already woven into the fabric of society.
Fascinating. So it becomes this kind of like unconscious cultural inheritance.
Precisely. And it goes beyond just work ethic, too. Remember that Puritan zeal for building a godly society?
Yeah, they were big on that, weren't they?
Totally. And that zeal, it didn't just disappear. It found a new outlet in social reform movements.
Interesting. Okay, give me an example.
Think about the abolition of slavery in the British Empire. That movement was fueled in part by this deep-seated moral conviction, this drive to right societal wrongs and create a more just world.
Wow. So they were connecting their actions to this larger mission of building a better society.
Absolutely. They saw themselves as continuing that Puritan mission, even if they weren't consciously making those connections.
It's wild how these threads connect across centuries. And it's not just those big, obvious examples, right?
Right. Think about some of the cultural clashes happening in England today, that tension between liberal and traditional values.
Yeah, I can see that.
You can actually find these subtle echoes of Puritan thought in those debates.
Wait, really? Like what?
Think about things like censorship or the role of religion in public life. In some parts of English society, there's still this lingering Puritan influence, a kind of wariness of excess.
Interesting. So are you saying that today's culture wars are partially a Puritan legacy?
Well, it's not that simple, but it's definitely a factor. These echoes of Puritan thought, even if they're not always conscious, they're still shaping how some people approach these issues.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so this Puritan thing, it's way more multifaceted than I initially thought.
Right, and that's what's so fascinating about diving into history like this. It's not just about the past, it's about understanding the forces that have shaped the world we live in today.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've been talking about like the surprising ways Puritan ideas still echo in our world,
Definitely.
but we've got to address the elephant in the room.
Right.
This whole chosen people thing.
Right.
It had a really dark side, too.
Absolutely. It did. Like, on the one hand, it fueled these huge social and political changes, but it also, justified some truly horrific things.
Yeah, our sources made it very clear that this mindset was devastating for Native Americans.
Yeah, and that's the thing about even, like, positive ideals. They can get twisted,
Totally. So how did that play out, like, with the Puritans and Native Americans?
Well, when you see yourself as, like, chosen, divinely ordained to build this new society, it becomes way too easy to dehumanize other people.
Yeah.
It's like they become obstacles to your God-given mission.
And that's exactly what happened.
It is. They inflicted violence, displacement, cultural destruction, all because they thought they were fulfilling God's plan.
It's scary how easy it is to, like, justify anything when you think you're on the right side of history.
100%. And that's a lesson that's, sadly still relevant today.
So true.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to look back at the Puritans and be like, wow, they were messed up. But this whole us versus them thing, this sense of, like, being inherently superior, we still grapple with that today.
All the time. And I think that's the most challenging part of this whole thing.
Yeah, it's like it's not just a history lesson anymore.
Exactly. We see it constantly. Religious extremism, nationalism, political polarization.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's everywhere.
Even just everyday prejudice.
Yeah.
It's that same Puritan shadow, that tendency to divide the world into us and them.
So how do we escape that? Like, seriously?
It's tough, right? I think the first step is just awareness.
Okay.
Like the next time you hear a narrative about a group being inherently better, or like they've got the ultimate truth.
Yeah.
Hit the pause button. Ask yourself, am I buying into this whole chosen people narrative?
That's a good one.
Right. Because it's so easy to just consume information that confirms what we already believe.
So true. We need to be more critical of those narratives, especially our own.
Exactly. We've got to be willing to understand different perspectives, even if it makes us uncomfortable.
It's tough work, but so important. Well said.
It is. It's like this ongoing legacy from the Puritans. It's up to us to keep those questions alive.
Totally. So basically, the Puritans might be long gone,
Right.
but their story,
Hmm.
it's still unfolding like all around
It
us.
really is.
And it's a good reminder that history, it's not just dates and names. It's about these powerful ideas and their impact on the world. And like, it's up to us to learn from them and hopefully, do better.
100%.
Awesome. Well, that was an incredible deep dive. Thanks for joining me today. It's been enlightening.
Thanks for having me. It's always fascinating to explore these complex legacies.